looking down into the abyss. A Dextromethorphan trip report uploaded to Arrowhead in November of 2023. Gender: male. Body weight: 170 pounds. Year of this experience: 2013. Age at the time of this experience: 18 years old. It all began on a cold Friday night, where my friend C and I met up, in hopes of getting absolutely annihilated before I left for Central America the next day. This was our spring break, and we were out of school with absolutely nothing to fill our time and nowhere to go. All of our farm dealers were completely dry. No Xanax, no Oxy, no nothing. C had been railing muscle relaxers that night. All we had on us was 2 grams of really potent marijuana and cigarettes, as well as a bottle of gin. Unfortunately, we had the most ingenious idea of getting DXM. This we had hoped would be a fun night, but our error in judgment led us to down 700 milligrams. As we were drinking this on the way back to my house, I could not finish the last bit of my syrup, so C told me to hand the rest to him. As we got back inside my house, we went into my room to chill out and smoke some grass. As we sat on my couch, we watched TV for what seemed like forever. I noticed that our pupils turned into fucking saucers, and I started to feel really drunk. Euphoria kicked in, and a little after that we both came up, and it was some of the strongest dissociation I have ever experienced. C started hysterically laughing and robo-walking around, telling me to stand up to see if I could even walk. As I stood up in my stupor from the comfort of the couch, my legs were knocked out from under me and the room turned into shades of red. As I hit the floor, I burst out in a fit of laughter, joining C, telling him how fucking hilarious everything in the room was. My eyes felt like they were free standing out of my face, and it looked as if I was seeing from the right side of my cheek rather than my eyes. At first, it was pretty awesome, but then came the nausea, and this nausea was like no other. I was feeling amazing, however, and all that was going on was very enjoyable. I just put the nausea out of my mind and focused on what was currently happening. The room would waft around and things would morph. The bed felt like it was wrapping its arms around me, and balls and trails of light would swoop in the room around us. I remember us making a video talking about how stupid this was and how fucked up that we were getting. It just seemed to get stronger and stronger, and as the effects kept coming up, so did the nausea, and it got worse and worse from here on out. While making the video, we were saying all kinds of foreshadowing shit that really scared me when I watched the video after all of these events transpired. I uttered the words, "I'm going to have an awesome flight tomorrow." I also remembered in my state of feeling locked to the ground, sensations running amok inside of my body, and the nausea making me so sick, but I could not do anything about it. I only had lunch that day, and it was now somewhere around midnight or 1 a.m. But time was utterly lost for me. I am sure of everything that I experienced while I was not fully there. I was still conscious of what we had done and what was going on. I was lost. There were points I would fall out of myself into blackness, and then snap back out of it and try to get up. But I would only roll around on the ground making grunting noises and drooling from my mouth. Sometimes when I could muster enough strength, I would stand up and it felt like I was walking backwards but moving forwards at the same time. Then I would begin to robo-walk around my room, stumbling into things and eventually getting so nauseated that I would fall on the floor. C and I were making so much noise we woke my dad, who told us to go to bed. So we figured the safest move would be to get into the bed and stay in the bed. While in my bed, the walls began to wiggle around and the shadows would lurk across the room, and I would see everything in different shades of light and dark. Lying in the bed, I could feel vomit slowly but steadily moving up my throat. Finally, I had had enough and ran to the bathroom in attempts to vomit and get this out of me. But when I got down to the toilet, the first parts of the vomit looked like clay, and it was hard. I am unsure if this was a hallucination, but it was extremely painful. And more came up. A lot more. So much that it began to choke me, and I could not breathe. Gasping for air, I began punching my throat with hopes of getting it out, and even reaching my hand in my mouth to get it all out. I puked so much of that bullshit out of me that all of the blood vessels in my face popped, and I looked pale as a ghost. Walking back to my bed was a fucking nightmare. I fell to the ground multiple times because my vision was so fucked up, and my frame of vision looked tilted as well as the room. When I finally crawled back in, I felt feverish and would get extremely cold, like a cold I had never felt in my life. I was sweating profusely, and my throat felt like it was about to close. I swore I was dying. At this point, I knew that we were both probably dehydrated as my head was killing me. Several times I made attempts out of the bed to get us some water that we both desperately needed, but each attempt failed. And as I would stand up, the robo walking kicked in, and my couch had this aurora around it that was drawing me into it. I would almost be sucked into it, and I felt like my body was being absorbed by the couch. If I tried to move away, I would lose my legs and fall to the ground. This happened each time I got up to get us water, and eventually I said fuck it, and we both fell asleep. We woke up the next day both still tripping. I was nauseated again and looked like the Walking Dead. My dad offered us breakfast, but the thought of food was unbearable to my stomach, and as soon as my nose reported the smell, I darted to my bathroom to puke once again. And this time it was even worse, and still looked like clay. C came into the room and looked at me and said, "Dude, we are so fucked up right now." Right when he finished, he dropped on my floor and started to convulse. I pulled my head out of the toilet and rushed over to him. I knew he was seizing, and his body would jolt up and back down with his legs banging against the walls in the bathroom. Foam came out of his mouth, and I stretched his legs out straight and laid him over my lap while propping his head up with hopes that he would not swallow his tongue. I was still tripping my balls off, and one of my best friends was on my floor having a seizure in my arms. I could barely hold him in my arms. My body was so drained, I could not think as fast, so I called my dad into the room to help me, and I got my phone out and called 911. I timed C's breathing, and he fell into a sleep. By the time the paramedics arrived, he was snapping out of it. He tried to get up, but I had to hold him around the waist because he started to vomit and was stumbling into the walls. They took him out in an ambulance. They kept trying to ask me what he was on, only because they saw how big his pupils were. I told them he needed to be helped. When they pressed on about it, I told them to fuck themselves. I was frustrated because they were playing 20 questions with me with my friend still in my arms after just having a seizure. He had not a fucking clue of where he was or what was happening. When they finally took him off in the meat wagon, I ran out there and grabbed his hand, telling him that he was going to be all right and that everything was copacetic. I said all that because I thought it would get him in a better state of mind. I could see the fear in his eyes, and I'm sure he could see it in mine as well. I had pretty much figured that this might be the last time I was going to talk to him. I called his mom, leaving her a message saying what we did and what we ingested, and then I told her I was sorry. Now here comes the fun part. I had to go to the airport after all of this, and I was sure I was going to die. I still was running a fever and could barely stand up straight. When I got to the airport, I couldn't even fucking walk straight. My face looked like I had been in an ice pick fighting contest, and I was still tripping. When I got to TSA, the lady looked at me as if I was crazy, and the airport was making me really uneasy. When I got through the first part of TSA, I was having trouble walking, and all of the guards were looking at me like they knew I was on something. The room felt like it was sideways, and when I would walk, I could not control which foot went first and which came second. On the airplane, my fever was sending me into pain. My body felt as if it were made of glass, and I nearly passed out. I walked through the aisle thinking that this would be it for me, and I truly felt as if this was it. I headed into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror, and the reflection took on character of its own, smirking and grinning at me, giggling, while then pointing at me with its index finger saying, "You are going to die," and then it kept saying my surname. I turned the light off and went back to my seat, now knowing I was going to die. I don't remember anything else as I woke up with the plane landing. My fever was gone, but I didn't feel the same. This hollow and empty feeling came over me, and to this day I don't feel like I will ever be the same. C was okay. They drug tested him. When they found the multiple substances in his body, They told him that it was the muscle relaxers that made him overdose. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more. Until next time.